Since when did you want to have a baby?
Vivian and I have been planning this for a year.
For a year? We broke up 16 months ago, so 4 months into a new relationship, you were like, let's have a child together?
Okay. All right, everybody, we're back on Play It Forward. We have Eritria Pitts. Thank you so much for being on the show, Eritria, filmmaker.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
We are going to be talking today about 4Gene, which you wrote, directed, acted in, and edited. And I should say you are also a story consultant.
That is true.
So that is important to mention. The film we're going to be talking about today is 4Gene, the short film. You were nominated by Ellie B. Thank you, Ellie B. And the story, before we dive into the story, a little bit about yourself, Eritrea. Can you share a little bit about where you're at in life now?
Where am I? That's a very loaded question. Where am I at life? I'm at a really great period in my life right now of just, really my love has always been story and really thinking outside of being a filmmaker of like how can I contribute to story. And so I've been doing a lot with story consulting, which has been such a phenomenal gift of being able to tap into and rethinking about there's so many people who want to tell a story, but just don't have the structure right. And so it's been like a lovely gift to be able to provide tools to people to tell their stories. That's where I am at life right now, of just like really heavy in story consulting, as opposed to like really creating films.
Cool. Well, I'm glad, you're definitely still able to tap into your passion
Yeah.
through that, and finding a niche. Um, your film today we're going to be talking about is 4Gene. Can you give us a little setup of the movie, the synopsis, what it's about?
Yeah. Board Jean is what I consider like a love letter to an ex. It's about the sacred, complicated goodbye between two people who love each other like deeply, um, but know that they're not right for each other, and sort of like the nuances of what that looks like.
Thank you. And that's a great way to summarize it. I mean, that's definitely what it feels like. To go into just a little more detail as far as the film, it looks like a lover's going back to her partner's house and her former partner's house, pick up a box that has 4Gene on it. And in the process, they haven't seen each other for like 16 months.
Mhm.
We find out, and in the process, one of them learns that the other one's pregnant,
Mhm.
and that was something that she had wanted but didn't happen with her, and
Mhm.
so they go through this bit of a roller coaster ride and kind of reminisce about their relationship, and still have that kind of their points of union and disharmony, and then ultimately she picks up her stuff and leaves. And so it definitely captures the mood and tone of that very well, which you yourself acted in. Um, and the first question to play it forward is, where did the inspiration come from in your life to make that movie?
What's really great about that is that film was actually inspired by a friendship breakup. So actually the character that plays May, like my ex, we actually had a friendship breakup that felt really deep and heavy.
Wow.
Mm.
So we're talking, when you say friendship breakup, it's not romantic.
Not
This
romantic at
is
all.
totally
Totally friendship,
platonic friends
platonic
breaking up,
friends.
and that is an awesome subject to explore. Please tell
One,
more.
100%. It's interesting because we were best friends, and people would always assume that we were in a relationship because we would call each other like life partners, but we were always just friends.
Yeah.
We had a very hard friendship breakup where um I broke things off where it felt very hurtful to be their friend.
Mm.
And then the blessing of the pandemic, maybe a bit after the pandemic, we sort of started to have those conversations again. And the perfect timing about that is it inspired, like, I want to do this film. And oftentimes, every film that I've made is always inspired by, it's never it's usually like a small moment, and I just sort of create a whole world about it. So it's never like the thing. It's never exactly the moment, but it's just inspires a lot of the emotions that feel very familiar.
Yeah.
I remember my friendship breakup with my friend. It was probably the hardest breakup I've ever
Mm.
experienced, like harder than any romantic
Yeah.
relationship. It was heartbreaking. I never knew, you would think about people who've experienced breakups and they would always say like, "Oh, I hate my ex. I hate my ex." And I never hated my romantic exes. I would always be like, "Oh, we weren't right for each other. Let's move on." But there was a period where I hated her. Like I hated her. And so I experienced all these emotions I never thought that I've never experienced before, that I felt the weight of what a true heartbreaking
Mm,
breakup
mm,
feels like.
mm, mm.
So so
Thank
that,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
that yeah.
No, thank you for that. I appreciate it because it's really interesting. Nobody, or nobody, but it's rare, and I haven't heard a lot of films or people even talking about it. To this friendship, this idea of a friendship breakup. I mean, there's definitely been several in my life, and the time and time again, the cause of a friendship breakup has been betrayal.
Mm,
That's, what it's been for me.
yeah.
Um, and that's just been the thing that is unforgivable. Like
Mhm.
I can't, how do you, especially without an apology or some sort of acknowledgement of it,
Yeah.
maybe if there's, some makeup, but there wasn't in the cases that I'm recalling. So I think it's important to mention that, not so much to go into, well, any dramatic story around why you guys broke up, but I think what's important is, well, what is the cause of that? Because it's got to be something unhealthy. Something is
Yeah.
unhealthy.
Yeah. Oftentimes these patterns of any breakup, and this is why it inspired this kind of this love story, right? But if any breakup, sometimes it really ends like you feel as if like you're putting more into a friend than they are putting to you,
Mm,
right?
mm, mm,
So that happens a lot even in romantic relationships, right? Like I'm giving more. I think you love me more than I love, I think I love you more than you love me, right? And that's how I felt. I felt like I deeply loved this friend. I mean, this is like I'm a person that keeps very few people in my life. I've just always been that way. I'm just very particular about who I let in. And so when I let you in, you are in. Like
mhm,
you
mhm,
are. And so it felt this betrayal of like, I think you value these other people in your life more than you value me. And
mm,
it broke me. And
mm,
so we went through a whole year of really just um not talking, not having a friendship. And so it was beautiful when we started to reconnect and reconnect our friendship. And from there, I'm like, you know what, this moment really is inspiring a film I want to make about, it's a variation of our relationship. It's more so like about but two lovers versus two friends, coming back
mm,
of that. But I think that's what I was rooted for. It was just like I felt like I poured more. But again, and this is about the nuances about love and relationships, is that we tend to we tend to have this very absolute idea of like this is how you are supposed to love, right? But everybody has their own way of loving, right? So um in my friends' eyes, they felt that they did love me and that they were there for me, but we were kind of living these two different perspectives and we just couldn't see it through at the time.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
Well, that's great background and a great lens to explore our own personal relationships in this film and how the film and your experience can share on our personal relationships. What I hear and what you said is a lack of appreciation. If you're, and it's not just so much, you know, I, I may feel, okay, I'm capable of more than this other person is capable of reciprocating. They have more limitations or whatever it may be. But if they value me and appreciate me and are not taking advantage of me,
Hmm.
that's the key thing.
Yeah.
If they respect me, because when you start taking advantage of people, right, there's a lack of respect. But
Yeah.
when they respect me, and I don't necessarily have to hear how great I am, but the respect, the honoring each other's, that the honoring of friendship has to be there in an
Yeah.
equal way. in this film, go ahead. No, you want to say something, please.
No, but yeah, and but that's the thing is that it really was about me only seeing it through my lens. And
Mm,
and the reality is we all have different love languages, right?
mm,
So some people's love language is acts of service, right?
yeah.
Some people's love language is words of affirmation. So we all have the way that we love, right? And I think it's very important to know, like, how does your person or your friend or whoever you're in a relationship with, whether it's like platonic or romantic, is like
Mm,
how do they show love?
yeah.
And you are able to use that as a translation of like, oh, this is how they're showing up for me. But I refuse to see it that way. I was convinced I was right.
Mm,
Like all breakups, right? Like
yeah. Yeah.
I was convinced I was right. I'm the good person, you're the bad person, when in fact none of us are bad people. I just didn't have the tools at the time to really um communicate that in a
Mm.
healthy way. I
Wow,
just
that's awesome. That's so great that you can see that, you
oh
can
yeah.
step behind. I mean, that's an amazing thing as a human to be able to do to grow. The for Gene, the two characters, it's a little different. I mean, the mood is very wrought with this heaviness, right? And that heaviness doesn't change throughout their entire interaction. That
Mhm.
heaviness stays. And the only thing that changes is that one character leaves and they're not to be reunited. They do part. So there is no growth in that way. They don't acknowledge that, I was limited. And
Yeah.
it, so in your film, to get to the meaning of it's because it's interesting because the meaning of your film is very different than the way you lived out the
Yeah.
reality. So
Yeah.
how do you see that?
Because most breakups aren't really clean like that, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, you're still carrying like, what the fuck happened? Okay, I mean,
Yeah,
what
it's all good.
happened? Okay, like what the fuck happened? It's a lot of gray, a lot of unspoken, and I wanted that film to feel like two people who have a lot of history. Maybe some moments about it is a bit toxic, and there's some acknowledgement of like of saying I'm sorry, but not really delving into like what happened,
Right.
because the realness of all relationships and breakups is it's most of the time it's very messy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. And you do have that moment of I'm sorry, and there's at least the acknowledgement of I did something wrong. But there's no like change of perspective. And now I'm thinking, I don't know if there could be a 4 Gene 2 or for self
Yeah.
because that's what it really comes to, right?
Yeah.
It comes down to I'm going to change the way I see my outlook on the world and acknowledge where you know what? I'm short-sighted so that I can see more, so
Hmm.
that I can experience more, so I can lead a fuller life.
Yeah.
So how were you able to get to that?
Oh, it took a long time. Even honestly, even when we made the film, and even uh there was still some unspoken thing that I wasn't even aware of, and that's a beautiful thing about like growth and age. It's like, you're constantly growing, you're constantly learning more, you're constantly like, as they say, like you're moving a layer of a previous self. And so even getting to this point is pretty recent. This is a friend that fortunately now like we are in a really great place. But even after we made the film, we still had these little moments where there's little fragility in there, some triggers, some old triggers.
I see. So you made the film actually, you continued your life, but the film was kind of like a snapshot of more along the where you were. You guys were still, I guess, in the process of reconciliation,
Yeah,
but not fully there.
100%. Yeah,
Interesting. And
yeah, yeah.
that's really cool. So, but then again, to the point is like, yeah, okay, you learn, you grow. Some people don't,
Hmm.
you know. So,
Hmm.
and it takes a certain amount of like a lot of swallowing your pride, right? There's a great statement. You can it's basically this. I don't think I'm butchering it. Let's see. You can be right or you can let love win.
Hmm.
Something along those lines,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And which do you want? It's a choice. You've got to make that choice.
Listen, I'm engaged, right? To my
Congrats.
wonderful fiance. Hi, Jeff. And that's something we struggle with all the time.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Sure.
always the hardest part. Like
Yeah.
it's something about like, yeah, do you want to be right, or do you want to be in this, or do you want to be in a marriage, right? At
Yeah.
least we had that from our therapist. But I will say though, when I think about even for Jean, it truly is a transition story. It's like, and that's what transitions look like, right? There's like, we're no longer here, we're no longer there, but we're somewhere in between. And I
Mm,
think that is what always shapes my storytelling. It's like,
mm,
do you love the nuance of like the in between,
mm,
like being
mm-hmm,
better than, because I think that us humans, we're always in the state of in between, right? We're
mm-hmm,
always
mm-hmm,
in transition between one phase to the other.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So when I think about for Jean, it really is a transition story. It's with restraint, it's with warmth, but it's also this very like raw emotional truth. Um, so I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, no, it's important.
Yeah.
Um, this idea of being in transition as humans constantly. So this idea of change, this constant change, and being able to move within the change, with the flow,
Hmm. Hmm.
to reference the Tao Te Ching.
And
How do we do that?
but the thing about transition, sometimes it's not even movement.
Yeah,
Sometimes transition is really like I'm really lost. Like currently in my life
sure.
now, I'm really in between. I'm lost
Yeah.
in many ways, but like at least I have the tools of like how to navigate what that looks like. But sometimes it's a matter of just like you're not moving. You're just recognizing that, okay, I'm in this really unfamiliar place. Some parts of it feels pretty familiar, but it's new and I don't know how to navigate it because it's new. So what do I do next? And I think that's a beautiful part about when you are in transition and when you move with transition is recognizing that you are in transition, because oftentimes when you are in transition, you struggle with the past, right? You're like, well, I used to do this, right? Or I was at a better place then, or you're thinking about like where you could be, but not really focusing on like what is real at this moment.
Yeah.
And so the best part about it is just to recognize like where are you? And being honest, because that's a very hard thing to say. It's like I think the hardest, I remember like January, February, I was like really like at a really heightened like loss period where, but once I admitted and said like I'm lost, I was able to release all the expectations like where I should be or what I'm supposed to be doing. There was a freedom of like figuring shit out.
Hmm.
And so that is what I've learned to do is like recognize that this is where I am. And if it means that you're lost, you admit that and know that it's not permanent. This too shall pass.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm not sure. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I forgot my question, but I think I think we're on the right, still the train's on the, tracks because um, you were talking about having the tools now, and I think the tool is, to cultivate the awareness of like, hey, I can't grab onto the past to make it real here, and I can't grab onto the future to make it here. The only thing that's here is now, and let me hold on to that and see what's in that. And in that, you can start kind of clearing up your eyes and see what is actually in front of you and
Yeah.
recognize where you are.
And even when I think about even for Jean, there's something really interesting about that too, because there's a moment when they slip into the past. There's something very familiar
Mhm.
about it,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Mhm.
and so in a
And there's a
moment,
few moments.
yeah,
I
right?
mean, yeah, most of their interaction is,
Yeah. And it's so easy to get lost because in even bad relationships, there are a lot of moments of good, right? And I think that's why a lot of people stay in like really unhealthy relationships because you're like, well, it's not always unhealthy. There's
Mhm.
some good stuff. And
Mhm.
so the beautiful thing when I look back at 14, there's this beautiful thing of like you can even wonder like what if they had this conversation before? What if they had this, that moment when they're saying they're sorry, or that moment where Jean recognizes that she may feel a certain kind of way, right? What if they have, we don't know. Like, we don't know. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe it would have changed something. Who knows? But it's like, it's those beautiful things of the dualities of like the past, what ifs, um, what's real now, the present. And so I think that is life, though. I think we're constantly just kind of navigating in those worlds.
Yeah, and it's sort of like asking the question, well, if you had the maturity that you have now, then would it the outcome have been different? Um, I think, rather than maybe going down that rabbit hole just as people, it's more like, okay, I have the maturity now, so in my next experience or current experience, how do I make this outcome, the best one that I want? And, to look at for Gene and to go to the last question, play it forward, which is how have you been personally changed by making the movie? I want to ask you that, but I want to salt and pepper it with a little bit of this to give you some opportunities to go where you like.
Okay.
Um, so how have you been personally changed by after making the movie, but and or having learned what you know now about relationships and how relationships are really all of them are reflections of our own relationships with ourselves. Um, what is it that you've learned through your attention with the filmmaking experience and cultivating that process and through 4Gene, as well as your own personal life and in your current and prior partnerships and your relationship with yourself? Where
Yeah. When I think back about for Jane, I really do think it's so funny because I've always been drawn to relationships. I like dealing with relationships, mostly a lot of romantic relationships that inspires me. Um, and I think oftentimes I use film to have those conversations that I was not able to have at the time, you know. What I do know about 4Gene, it really sort of revealed, as I even kind of reflected my previous relationships, about like the complexities of loving someone, like generally like loving someone and knowing that it's not, I mean, it's not enough.
yeah,
Like having the best chemistry, having the best history, all that it really is not enough. It's about like really aligning with someone that is where you are at the time, you know? And that definitely has shaped a lot of, and I think it sort of trickled years later, but I do think how I approach now, of just recognizing that I do feel like I manifested my fiance. I mean, the timing just came really perfect where I wasn't saying so much, well, I don't want this in a relationship. I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. I was just more like, well, this is what I want. And this is what I wanted to feel, you know?
yeah.
And when I declare that, I mean, I'm not saying this is a magic sauce of like,
Hey,
manifest your love, that's
why
not,
not?
but who knows, but
Yeah,
I do know the power of not only saying this is what you want, but you're also moving in a
yeah.
space
You
of,
are becoming what you want,
amen,
and therefore you attract it. You
amen,
can see it
amen.
when it's coming to you.
I saw
Yeah,
it. And so when I met my fiance, it was this almost this kind of this divine, I mean, it really feels like a very divine alignment. But
yeah.
again, prior
It's
to that, I was actively looking for the things that I wanted in someone. And I was becoming that too. Because again, like you attract what you are,
yep,
right?
yep.
And so if I did not want to be in these unhealthy relationships and all that, then I need to sort of like have a real
Get
conversation
healthy.
of like, what are my toxic traits?
Yeah, yeah.
And even when you think about 4G, it's like her new partner, Vivian, I mean, she never was named in a movie, but like her new partner, Vivian, is in alignment of where she is in her life,
Mhm.
you know?
Yes,
May,
yes,
and may
yes,
serve a period that no longer served her.
yes.
She loves him. That's not. So it's like moving in alignment. I think that definitely was the beginning of me really moving in my alignment. And that's always my nightly prayer. When I pray, I'm not praying like, Lord, get me this. I'm always praying like, Lord, I want to move in my alignment. Please have me. I just want to move in my alignment.
Yeah. And what do you mean by alignment?
And my alignment of just that not fighting for things that are not for me,
Mm,
right? And I'm moving and things because I'm a firm believer like what is for you, it
yeah.
is for you,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so I always want to make sure I'm moving in my own path, my line path, and
Yeah.
not looking over at other, well, this person is doing that. Maybe I should be, no, no, no. Like I want to have a discernment that no, I am moving in the path that I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
So even in moments when I'm lost, I'm not trying to like compare what the other person is doing that doesn't seem lost. I know this is kind of my path where I'm in.
Yeah.
And I'm now continuously moving my alignment.
That's beautiful. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that. You know, what a beautiful path of faith, acceptance, and purpose. I mean, all those things are there in what you're saying and how you're living it. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. What a treat. Thank you for that gift. Eratria Pitts, filmmaker, story consultant, LEB, thank you again. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. Till next time, friends, family. Peace. Yes, got the wave. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna stop us. Record.